Hi, I'm Alistair Shipley. Driven by the beliefs that everyone has something special to offer, I created Not So Average, the podcast that proves that you don't need to be in the top 1% to be truly extraordinary. Each episode spotlights everyday people from your community, the very individuals you might pass on the street. These relatable stories reveal that whether you're a jack of all trades or a niche specialist, we all have unique experiences and valuable lessons to share. Imagine if we all took a moment to realize we're all not so average. Let's get after it. Hey, Not So Average listeners, this is your host, Alistair Shipley. And this week, instead of bringing on a special guest, I am discussing the understanding and managing of stress and anxiety. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And if this isn't something that you particularly want to listen to because you got this under control or you think you know what you need, I'm not here to change your mind on that stuff. But for those that, might be dealing with stress and need a few more suggestions to just help them through, this episode is for you. And each week we try and bring on a special guest to talk about their stories. I did get feedback from the audience that they actually appreciated my one-on-one discussions, and I wanted to start making this a little more common every 5 episodes or so. I guess we'll see, depending on guest volume. But let's start sharing. So before I really start discussing some of the learnings that I have, for those on YouTube, I am reading from something that I diligently wrote out because stress and anxiety aren't just small talking points. I wanted to make sure that I actually got my learnings articulated in a way that people could actually walk away with some golden nuggets and also address some things that were near and dear to my heart. So if my eyes are wandering down, it won't look good for all of those clips and stuff on Instagram and YouTube. But for the listeners, I'm hoping that this makes the journey and the talking points resonate that much more. So several months ago, I had a moment where I had to face how I was showing up with my stress. I always thought that I had a pretty good grasp of stress, or at least an awareness of it, but man, was I fucking wrong. And this time I couldn't ignore it. Since then, I've been on a mission to understand stress and anxiety, not just for myself, but so I can be a better person for those around me. Am I cured? Definitely not. But I can actually see the changes in myself and at the very least recognize when I'm being reactive thanks to the pressures of stress. The work isn't done yet. It's in fact only just getting started. I've come to the realization that I am trying to unlearn several decades of learned habits. And that's not something that's going to happen overnight. Talking to my friends and my family, it became clear we are in a stressed out generation. We're constantly inundated with information. We're constantly accessible to others. We are globally comparing ourselves because of the platforms that we have in front of us at any given time. That's why I wanted to have this conversation to help us all identify stress, understand how it connects to anxiety, and share what I've learned that has made a difference. Also, I do in fact want to change the views or the stigma on how men show up with stress. Now, sometimes stress needs you to handle it versus just avoiding it, and you do in fact deserve to be able to talk about it. But I am of the opinion that if there's no action or attempt on your behalf to make a change, then you can only sing this tune for so long. Now, disclaimer, I'm going to be shocked if anybody out there thinks that I have a scientific background or that I am in fact a doctor or a medical professional. I am not. This is just a friendly conversation between friends. This is not to be a replacement for medical advice. This is just one guy sharing how he has navigated his bullshit stress story. Now, all right. Now that's out of the way. Let's get after it. Let's understand what is stress and what is anxiety. Starting with what is stress? Stress is your body's fight or flight response to pressure, whether from work, finances, relationships, or unexpected challenges. It's your brain saying, handle this now. It can be useful in short bursts, but harmful when it becomes constant. Now, what is anxiety? Anxiety is when stress sticks around even when there's no immediate threat. It's excessive worry about the future, overanalyzing situations, and feeling like something bad is always about to happen. Ever been there? I'm sure a lot of you are nodding your heads. This is very common in today's day and age. We're constantly we're letting this stuff pile up. How does stress and anxiety connect? Stress triggers anxiety. If stress lasts too long, your brain stays in high alert mode, creating constant worry. Anxiety makes stress worse. It keeps your mind focused on worst case scenarios, keeping your body in a stress state even when nothing is happening. Both impact your body and mind similarly. So we got fast heartbeat, muscle tension, trouble sleeping, irritability, and difficulty focusing. I don't truly believe that all of us have ADHD. I do believe that a lot of us are dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, and that's why we're struggling to focus. How does stress and anxiety affect your life? Now, we've all probably heard this. It impacts us in 3 areas. You got physically, mentally, and emotionally. Physically, where it affects you is generally in things like tension in your muscles, headaches, stomach pain, increased heart rate, shallow breathing, fatigue, difficulty sleeping, and I'm not even going to get into the topic of what it does to your libido. Mentality. So you got racing thoughts, overanalyzing everything. You got forgetfulness, lack of focus, feeling overwhelmed or stuck. Emotionally, you have mood swings, irritability, feeling detached or overly emotional. You got loss of motivation, struggling to enjoy things you once loved. Now, with those 3 areas being impacted, it can obviously trickle into your relationships. So you obviously have your romantic, then you have your other personal relationships, and then you have your workplace relationships or professional. Romantic relationships can see something like snapping at your partner, avoiding conversations, withdrawing emotionally. Friends and family could see you not being present, feeling detached, taking things personally. And then at work, you could just simply be struggling to focus, poor communication, overworking to cope. If you feel like you're constantly on edge, impatient, or avoidant, your stress and anxiety might be affecting your life more than you realize. Might be time to take a step back and look at that. In my own experience, stress restricted my ability to be empathetic. It also made me less tolerant of others, less likely to take someone else's perspective over my own, and narrowed my tunnel vision to nothing but my own personal concerns. In addition, I felt stuck. I felt very indecisive. I felt incapable of creating my own momentum. But the overall optics of what my stress and anxiety were doing was basically just making me an overall crummier person to be around. The issue with how most of us handle stress is that we often just distract ourselves from the root cause or even the possible solution. I found I was personally doing this, but in fact, all of the stress and anxiety just compound. Think of stress like shaking a pop bottle or a soda bottle, depending on what part of the world you're in. Every stressful moment, say a bad day at work, a fight with a friend, financial pressure, each moment adds more pressure inside of that bottle. But instead of letting out small releases, you keep tightening the cap, holding it in. One day, someone barely taps on the bottle and suddenly it explodes. Not because of that one small thing, but because of everything that was already inside of that bottle. This happens all the time with stress. It may not be the big things that break you. It's all the little unaddressed stressors that have been piling up over time. And who gets the worst of it usually? The people closest to us. Now, this podcast just so happens to fall within March, and it was also filmed within March. And March is Men's Mental Health Month. So I thought this would be a fitting time to plug the stigma around men and stress. One thing that I've realized is that many men struggle to talk about stress and anxiety. There's an unspoken rule that we should tough it out or handle it ourselves. Society has built this idea that vulnerability equals weakness. And yet, at the same time, there's increasing pressure for men to open up. The problem, many times when men do open up, they're met with responses that make them feel dismissed, unheard, or even worse, have their own feelings turned against them. This contradiction discourages men from seeking support and reinforces the belief that suffering in silence is the only option. The truth? Ignoring stress doesn't make it disappear. It just builds it up. And when it does, it finds other ways to surface. Short tempers, emotional shutdowns, burnout, destructive habits, or even physical health issues. Stress isn't something we can just push through forever. Eventually, it demands to be dealt with. How do we change this? And I think that there's 4 ways that we can, and that's by creating environments where men feel safe to talk. That means encouraging real conversations in friendships, relationships, and workplaces, ones where men don't feel that they have to minimize their struggles to be taken seriously. Let's normalize checking in beyond how's it going and actually listen to the answer. Now, how often, think back yourself, you have this gut feeling that somebody isn't doing so well, but you were thoughtful enough to reach out. You say, how's it going? And you get a quick response. I'm doing fine, or I'm doing good. You? And instead of slightly pushing back and saying, hey, I feel like something's going on in your world. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm open to it. Or if there's anything else that's going on, I'm here for you. Pushing a little bit further, we just leave it and just move on from the conversation. Now, I don't know if this is because we feel uncomfortable either pushing, or if they do give us a response, we don't know what to do with it. But I want to go beyond these simple questions of how's it going? I want people to actually feel comfortable to share beyond that as well. So that leads into the third point of how we make a difference and make a change. Leading by example. Being open about your own struggles. That's why I'm in fact doing this episode. I found by talking to other people, they started to share a little bit more about what they were going through. I even had them say, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me get this off my chest. Thank you for letting me notice that this was something that was actually building up that was going unaddressed. I want people to see that this sharing of stress and anxiety is in fact possible. Now the last point, understanding that talking about stress isn't complaining, it's problem solving. Seeking help isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of strength and self-awareness. The reason why I made this a final point was in my personal life, I am known for sharing. But I was also told by somebody that it came across like I had no solutions. And that did obviously stick with me. But in reality, if there was more time between us, they would have seen that I share to get things off my chest, which gives me room to then address these problems on my own at some point. I do not need to always be helped. And frankly, and this is just for myself, when I need help, I'll ask for it. This kind of goes back to a point that I made on an episode closer to New Year's about the 4 H's. And this person brought up that often when people come to you to talk, they're looking for 4 things: to be hugged, to be heard, to be helped, or to be humped. And that puts a smile on my face, obviously, but most of the time it's because we just want to be heard. And in my case, I came to people not to have them give me a solution, but just so I could discuss the point. We need to redefine strength, not as hiding emotions, but as having the courage to address them. If you're someone who struggles with this, start small. Talk to your close friends, write down your thoughts in a journal, or simply take a moment to acknowledge how you're feeling. The more we practice, the more we break down the stigma. Now, for those who want to be a support system to a man working through stress and anxiety, just one word: listen. Allow them to share and get everything out without interruption and immediate solutions. Now, don't be awkward and just sit there in silence, but remove your ego and your desire to fix it and ask appropriate questions, or just be a sympathetic ear for them to confide in. Many times we just need to be heard, not fixed. Another thing that is overlooked is the timing of these discussions. Nobody wants to feel like this big emotional share is to be fit between you running out the door or squeezed into the day. Sometimes we need to schedule these kinds of discussions and remove distractions. And one of the biggest mistakes you can make, I'm shocked that I'm going to even have to bring this up, but I have seen it. I think it goes without saying. Never throw their vulnerability back at them. Now, this rarely happens immediately. People are starting to become a lot more aware of this stuff, but it does come up and fester and get thrown back at you in the future. This is a guaranteed way to shut down communication for a long time, if not forever, around stress and anxiety. So please be conscious of this stuff. Now, these are suggestions that I'm throwing out there to help men go through stress and anxiety, but these are transferable to the women in your life as well. Keep that in mind. If we want men to be more open about stress, we have to make sure they have a space where their words won't be dismissed or weaponized. Now, how to lower stress and anxiety. So we've talked about how we can create environments and how being heard versus being fixed are important. Now let's have some action plans from things that I've learned that might actually help you guys. Okay, so now I want to share some things that are just public knowledge about how to address stress and anxiety, and then I'll get into my own things that I've done. But here's just the general consensus with a little bit of information behind it. So number one, and this seems so simple, but breathe. Deep, slow breaths tell your brain you're safe. When you take a deep breath in through your nose, storing it in your stomach, and out through your mouth, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, once again, this is a highlight that I am not a medical professional. I can barely flip and get that word out. Parasympathetic nervous system. Specifically, the vagus nerve. This is the body's natural relaxation system, which counters the stress response. It turns off your fight or flight response. When stressed, this is quite the section. When stressed, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, causing shallow breathing, increased heart rate, and tension. Deep breathing switches on the parasympathetic nervous system, telling your brain, hey, we're safe. We can calm down now. It activates the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve runs from your brain stem down to your stomach and controls relaxation in your body. Slow, deep breaths stimulate the vagus nerve, lowering heart rate, blood pressure, and stress hormones like cortisol. It regulates oxygen and carbon dioxide levels. Shallow breathing from stress increases CO2 buildup, which make you feel dizzy or anxious. Deep belly breathing balances oxygen and CO2, helping you feel grounded and clear-headed. It also obviously releases muscle tension and improves focus and emotional control. Now, how to do it right? This seems so crazy, but a lot of people aren't breathing right. They're doing like in through the mouth, out through the mouth. They're doing it just in their chest. So let's actually do this together. A simple method is box breathing, used very commonly in the Navy SEALs to stay calm under pressure. That's a inhale through the nose for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. Now, when you inhale, you're filling your stomach, not your chest. And then you exhale slowly through your mouth for 4 seconds. Some even say up to 8. Fully emptying your lungs. And then hold for 4 seconds. Not taking a breath, but holding that empty lung capacity. Then repeat. And some people do this for 60 seconds, 5 minutes, you name it. But it's simple. In through the nose. Hold. Out through the mouth. Hold. And you start all over again. Now, crucial part being in through your nose, hold in your stomach, out through your mouth, hold, and repeat. Now, the second thing that helps relieve stress is moving your body. Walk, stretch, dance, movement, whatever. When you're stressed, your body enters a fight or flight mode, a survival response meant to protect you from danger. But in today's world, stress isn't usually about escaping a predator. It's about work, relationships, finances, or mental overload. The problem, your body still produces stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, but there's no physical action to release them. Movement is the best way to complete the stress cycle. Here's why. It burns off excess stress hormones. So stress floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol, preparing you to run or fight. If you don't physically release the energy, it stays in your system, causing tension, restlessness, get the word out, buddy, and anxiety. Exercise, stretching, or even walking signals your brain we can escape the threat. The other part is that it activates the sympathetic. Oh my gosh, this word. I am not a doctor, and this only gets further strengthened the more I try and say this. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system. Exercise turns off the fight or flight and activates rest and digest. And then, as mentioned before, it also impacts that vagus nerve. It releases endorphins. So you got endorphins that equal naturally good mood boosters. You have dopamine, the motivation and reward chemical. You have serotonin, the calm and happiness chemical. And then you have another word that is going to be really difficult for me to pronounce, but norepinephrine, the stress regulator. Dear Lord, I'm so glad I didn't go to medical school. But these are all chemicals that are drastically improved by just exercise and movement. Now, going back to how you can make impacts on your stress, it's talking about it. So, sharing your thoughts with someone you trust to help if you need it. taking breaks, step away from work or screen to reset. How many times have you been in the office and you can feel the anxiety piling on and you just think, okay, I'm going to work through it some more. And I think this is a part of just societal norms. It's just brute force is the answer. And that's, in fact, not the answer. You need to take a step back sometimes. And sometimes it's as small as like just 5 minutes of sunlight. Improve your sleep. Reduce screen time before. Use blackout curtains and create a bedtime routine. Limit stimulants. So we got coffee, we got sugar, we got social media, the biggest, baddest drug of them all. And then reframe your thoughts. Ask, will this matter a year from now? Is this just a feeling or is this just a thought? Something that was brought to my attention that really stuck back in October when talking to a close friend from jiu-jitsu. He said the 3 C's: catch it, check it, change it. So when you have a thought around stress or anxiety, catch the thought, check what it's regarding, and then change it. And generally that change allows you to just walk away from it. Now, a lot of those examples were just public knowledge of how you can make changes in your stress. Now, these are my list of things that worked well for me. And these are things that I've talked about extensively with other guests, that I've shared on my other one-on-ones. And here they are. So we got meditation. This really helped me slow down my thoughts immensely. We have journaling. Gave me clarity and perspective. I was able to physically see the words and acknowledge what my thoughts were. And I rarely ever went into a journaling session with an intention. I just wrote what had to be written down, or at least what felt like it had to be written down. Then you have improved sleep. So also from the list above, I added blackout curtains to my life, and my God, just getting rid of the light pollution that was coming into my room drastically improved my sleep. It also made the room a little bit cooler too, because it was blocking out some of the sunlight during the day. And to improve my sleep, I also reduced screen time before bed. That's where I started introducing my journaling at the end of the day or reading a book. The other thing that's really given me some reprieve from stress and anxiety is setting boundaries. I learned to say no to things that didn't add value to my life. I am intrinsically a people pleaser. I might be a little overly candid sometimes, but at my core, I like to make people happy. So anytime I got invited to things, I'd say yes, no matter what. I would take on so much shit onto my plate. But now I started setting boundaries because I found that by just taking all this stuff on, it just only made me feel less in control of my own time. That made a huge difference. And that flows actually into, I started to manage my schedule better. So by shutting down a lot of these, I guess, events or requests for my time to make other people happy, I freed up time for myself, which allowed for less rushing in between things. You know those people in your life that just have so much going on that they look like they're running around like a chicken with their head cut off at any given point because they're just running between things, never having time to rest, never having a moment of boredom. That was me. Then the other thing that helped drastically was talking about it. Open conversations with friends brought new insights, and seeking a professional helped me assess parts that most people are unable to treat on their own. Your friends and your family have great intentions. Rarely do they have the background or the experience with this stuff happening enough in their life to recognize patterns to help you. So a quick side note here, finding a good professional makes a world of difference. In the end, you want to find someone who works for you, but be sure that you're not picking them because they only validate and don't push your points. I've tried several therapists in my life, and I was And I found that it was really easy to find people that just had me stay in the course that I was already on. They didn't really push me. So this is a complete side note when looking at a therapist. Look at somebody that actually pushes you comfortably. Also, guys, fuck the stigma. Therapy helps. Therapy helps. Now, I'm not going to go say find just any old therapist. Find the therapist that relates to what you want to change in yourself. I personally sought after having a male therapist, and no qualms with women that are psychologists at all. I just really needed somebody that lived the same stresses and same issues that I was going through daily. Not they've heard through the men that they treat or the men in their lives. These are the things that they overcome. Still more valuable than not seeing a therapist at all. But this was just something that was, I will not pass go if I didn't have that option. And it's made such a difference. Happy to have this conversation in the DMs if people want to talk this through. But yeah, that was just something that really worked for me. I did start to utilize CBD as well. So this was a final game changer for me. And this isn't something that I'm implementing every single day. And once again, big disclaimer, CBD is not going to be legal for everybody. Where I'm at in the world, it is legally allowed here in Canada. So I started taking CBD just on those times, for those times when I felt like everything else on my list was not making a difference or touching the anxiety or the stress. If I couldn't get away from the stress itself, say it was something that was pressing at work or whatever, sometimes I introduce CBD just to lower that heart rate, get rid of that fight or flight, let me ground. And that's made a world of difference from time to time. Now, it's never going to be one silver bullet to fix all of this. That's why there's this list. That's why I'm sharing all of this. And hopefully this makes a difference. I've also found some great resources that helped me. So, you got apps like Headspace, which I use for my meditation. You also have Calm. Then you got podcasts. One of my favorite podcasts, one of my favorite podcasters is Modern Wisdom with Chris Williamson. He had an episode with Dr. Robert Shepolsky. It's titled How to Beat Stress, Feel Better, and Live Longer. I'm going to add it in the show notes. That was a really insightful podcast for me. Maybe it was just a point in time in which I was listening to it. Then you also have On Purpose with Jay Shetty. He had an episode with Mel Robbins, which I'm also going to share in the show notes. These were just some starting points for me. I haven't really found any books that have resonated with me overly well. They just felt like they were talking at me and I didn't really stick out any. I had a whole bunch of recommendations with books. I'm sorry, don't have any for this case. But we have in fact gotten to the end of this podcast. My final thoughts that I wanted to share, like stress and anxiety aren't just in your head. They affect your body, your decisions, your relationships. The good news, small intentional actions can help you take control and feel like yourself again. I started this podcast because there's an area of my life that I needed to go after, and that was just feeling like I was in a space of constant learning again. I love to learn. I love learning from others. I love learning from courses. I love feeling like I am progressing. There was a little period in time where I was pretty stagnant. I was sitting basically on a line. It wasn't going up. It wasn't going down. By adding this podcast to my life, it gave me motivation to learn and get out of my comfort zone and reach out to people that I've always respected and thought were great for this community to learn from. My hope is that an episode like this, another area that I put a lot of focus into recently, helps you. And if it doesn't, shoot me a message. I'm curious to figure out why. You can challenge me. I'm comfortable with that. But do recognize that this is my path, my journey. I feel like it's going to help others, but this is your own recipe to cook up. You are going to have to figure out what works for you, and it's not going to always look the same. If this episode resonated with you, let's keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts, share your experiences. Like I said, message me directly and share what's worked for you. Maybe there's some things that I need to add on next time. Let's navigate stress together and let's get after it. Let's see you in the next episode. And out through your mouth, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, once again, this is a highlight that I am not a medical professional. I can barely flip and get that word out. Parasympathetic nervous system. Deep breathing switches on the parasympathetic nervous system, your PNS. I got to cut that out. We are not saying PNS. Somebody's going to cut that into some crazy clip somewhere. Dear Lord, I'm so glad I didn't go to medical school. That was really shitty. Let's do that one again.